By 1763, the drawn-out war between the French and the British is over. In the Treaty of Paris, France cedes all of the Louisiana Territory to Spain and the rest of its North American possessions to Great Britain. New France has become British. Now the task facing the victorious British is winning the allegiance of the Indian tribes that had been staunch allies of the French. That duty falls to Supreme Commander Jeffrey Amherst, who more than any other general who fought the war, put the British on the winning side.
I am not for giving the Indians any provision. When they find they can get it on asking for it, they will grow remiss in their hunting. As to purchasing the good behavior either of Indians or others, that is what I do not understand. When men of whatsoever race behave ill, they must be punished, not bribed.
The new regime of the British is an abrupt reversal. No presents, no ammunition, no provisions to be advanced, no rum sold. Trade is to be confined to the forts, not in the social atmosphere of the surrounding settlements. When the Indians learn that Spain has joined forces with France, rumors spread that the two nations are preparing to drive the British from North America. Symbols of war are relayed from the French in Illinois to the Great Lakes tribes. Prepare to strike against the British. Many in Pontiac's own tribe, even Pontiac's own chief, the powerful Mackinac, favor throwing in their lot with the current victor, the British. But Pontiac hesitates. The French have proven their friendship. The British have shown them contempt. A plan begins to form in Pontiac's mind. During the war, he asks, what kept Amherst and his redcoats from being defeated? It was Indians themselves, he says, and their unwillingness to unite as a mighty fighting force. As Pontiac gains confidence, he acts decisively. He splits with his own chief, and many of the Ottawa warriors join him. On April 27, 1763, Pontiac calls a council of neighboring chiefs and warriors at the Ecorse River, some 10 miles from the fort. When Pontiac rises to speak, there is silence. He adds nothing to the litany of complaints. Rather, he speaks of the Delaware prophet's visions.
The Master of Life saith to the prophet, this land where ye dwell have I created for ye, and for no others. I say unto ye, drive out the white men, send them back to the lands I have created for them, and let them stay therein.
His speech deeply impresses the assemblage. It unites the chiefs and warriors of different tribes. They declare that they are willing to follow Pontiac wherever he may lead. Pontiac's plan is a daring and cunning one. The target, the long necklace of forts that had been hung about the Great Lakes. Each one, Pontiac notes, shared similarities to Fort Detroit. British inside, French and Indians outside, but close by. Most are more isolated than Fort Detroit, and many are only minimally occupied. With subterfuge, surprise, and the help of the French, the Indians can mount a mass attack and take back the circle of forts. He vows that if the Indians cannot crush the English inside the fort, they will destroy them on the outside. It is the 7th of May, 1763. Settlements skirting the fort are ravaged. Settlers and their families are killed or captured. Stores of food are broken into, livestock appropriated. Supplies going into the fort are stopped, as is any hope of relief. A column of British soldiers and rangers, 96 men in all, sets out from Fort Niagara. On May 13th, near the Detroit River, unaware of the hostilities, they are ambushed. More than half are killed. Fort Detroit is cut off as one after another, the Indians that live around the British forts rise up. News of the rebellion, begun the month before, hasn't yet reached the garrison at Fort Michilimackinac in upper present-day Michigan. But the local Chippewas living outside the fort are better informed. On June 2nd, 1763, The Chippewa, Ojibwe, and Sauk gather outside the fort.
The attack on Michilimackinac is probably one of the classic incidents in the early history of the Great Lakes frontier. The Indians gathered outside to play a game of bagataway or lacrosse, tossing the ball back and forth, the gates standing open, the British sentries and a good part of the garrison standing around, certainly not ready to repel an attack. And suddenly the ball is thrown over the wall. The players chase in after it. They pass their women, take weapons from underneath their blankets, and immediately turn on the British garrison.
21 of the 35 soldiers at Michilimackinac are killed. The attack is a key victory for the Indians and a blueprint for other attacks. On May 16th, after a 10-day siege, Fort Sandusky falls to the Indians. The entire 15-man garrison is killed. On May 23rd, Fort Miami is overtaken. Of its 15-man garrison, 3 are killed, 5 are taken prisoner, and 4 escape. In Michigan, on May 25th, Fort St. Joseph falls. 12 of its 15-man garrison are killed. By May 29th, in Pennsylvania colony, Fort Pitt is under siege. Fort Ouiatenon, near Lafayette, Indiana, is surrendered to the Indians on June 1st. 20-man garrison and its commanding officer are taken prisoner. As word of the Indian attacks trickles back to New York, General Amherst at first reacts with annoyance.
The Indians have been doing mischief, but I cannot entertain a thought that they have been able to cut off the garrison of Detroit or any of the posts where officers are stationed.
The attacks continue, spreading to the Pennsylvania colony. On June 16th, the Indians take Fort Venango. The entire 15-man garrison and its commanding officer are killed. On June 18th, Fort Le Boeuf is attacked. Garrison escapes with only 2 men killed. On the following day, the fort at what is now Erie surrenders after a heated battle near Presque Isle. Between May 16th and June 20th of 1763, the British have lost 9 of their 11 forts in the Great Lakes region. 2 of their key strongholds, the heavily fortified forts Detroit and Pitt, are under siege. For the British, the situation is now desperate. At Fort Detroit, meanwhile, Pontiac hints at peace talks. Captain Campbell eagerly volunteers to meet with him. Pontiac offers his terms for peace. The same terms he says that the British offered the French, complete and total surrender. But Campbell is not allowed to take this ironic message to Gladwin. Instead, Pontiac sends the ultimatum back with his French allies. In effect, Campbell and McDougall are hostages. Pontiac has broken one of the most fundamental rules of war, violating the sanctity of truce and parley. The siege of Fort Detroit drags on, but Pontiac's forces are fortified by news that the other forts are falling. They are sure now that the French army will soon be roused and join them. It is several weeks into Campbell and McDougall's enforced stay as Pontiac's guests. Frustration is high among Pontiac's allies. To them, the siege seems like endless waiting. In the deadlock, the alliance is losing momentum. Tempers run high. The captives decide to take advantage of the general discord. Lieutenant James MacDonald, one of the officers at the fort, details their plan. The nearsighted and overweight Campbell is left behind, just as one of the skirmishes outside the fort takes a deadly turn.
About 20 Indians came to attack. They were drove off with the loss of 1 man killed, which our people scalped and cut to pieces.
The dead man is the nephew of an Ojibwe chief and a powerful member of Pontiac's alliance. The chief sends a message to Pontiac demanding revenge. Pontiac, to preserve the Confederacy, is forced to turn over his prime bargaining chip and a man whom he has called his friend. Campbell is marched to the Ojibwe camp and tomahawked, his heart ripped from his body and eaten. Word of the outrage, the killing of an emissary sent to parley, electrifies the British. Commander-in-Chief Amherst places a reward of £100 on Pontiac's head. He wants him alive. He wants him humiliated and publicly hanged. The killing of Campbell seems to heighten hostilities on both sides. The grisly murder of his officer only strengthens Gladwin's resolve. He will never surrender to Pontiac. In the meantime, Commander-in-Chief Amherst institutes a new Indian policy: take no prisoners. He instructs Bouquet.
The Indians of the lakes are to be treated not as a generous enemy, but as the vilest race of beings that ever infested the earth, and whose riddance from it must be esteemed a meritorious act for the good of mankind.
One man is eager to make the new policy a reality: Captain James Dallier. Once there, Dallier pressures Gladwin in an ill-advised surprise attack, as Gladwin later recounts.
Captain Dallier requested, as a particular favor, that I would give him the command of a party in order to attempt the reproval of Pontiac's camp under cover of the night. To which I answered that I was of the opinion that Pontiac was too much on his guard to effect it.
Dallier's sortie begins at 2:30 a.m. on the 30th of July, 1763. Backed up by the celebrated and experienced Robert Rogers and his Rangers, Dallier gives the order to advance. Now they are crossing a wooden bridge over Parents Creek. Then comes a terrible moment of realization. Pontiac has gotten advance word of the plan and is waiting for them. In the confusion and darkness, Rogers and his Rangers provide fire cover for a hasty retreat, while Dallier, stopping to help a wounded soldier, is shot dead. For Pontiac, Bloody Run is a needed boost. Now more and more Indians, more chiefs and warriors join his cause. But the English won't back down. Amherst doubles the price on Pontiac's head. Amherst considers even more extreme measures in a letter to Bouquet.
Could it not be contrived to send the smallpox among the disaffected tribes of Indians? We must on this occasion use every stratagem in our power to reduce them. You will do well to try and inoculate the Indians by means of blankets, as well as to try every other method that can serve to extirpate this execrable race.
At Fort Pitt in the Pennsylvania colony, the attack has been dragging on for 7 weeks. Desperate to break Pontiac's grip, Amherst now turns to one of his most trusted officers, Colonel Henry Bouquet. Bouquet has orders to bring food and reinforcements to Fort Pitt and destroy any Indians who get in his way. In the wake of Campbell's killing, Bouquet's hatred of the enemy has grown to rival Amherst's. Bouquet sets out on May 29th from Carlisle with about 500 men, 300 of them Highlanders, members of the Scottish Black Watch. The rest are drawn from regular regiments, plus a contingent of Rangers who are familiar with the terrain. It's a 250-mile march west to Fort Pitt. By August 5th, they approach a small post called Bushy Run Station. They've been marching since sunrise. Suddenly, there is an ear-splitting war cry, followed by a sudden frontal attack on the advance guard. The warriors, invisible in the woods, have them hemmed in. Bouquet orders a retreat as his men are fired on from behind every tree. The Indians are running desperately low on ammunition, but already more than 60 of Bouquet's men are dead. The Indians are certain of victory. The fate of the Pennsylvania colony, indeed, the fate of Pontiac's rebellion, hangs on the next day's fighting. Bouquet is desperate, pinned down by an invisible enemy. His rescue party now seems in need of rescue themselves. That night, Bouquet confers with his officers. On the verge of defeat, he comes up with a daring plan. As the Indians attack, 2 companies will appear to withdraw, luring the Indians out of their cover and into a trap. For the Indians, it's now or never. Early the next morning, warriors make a rush into a thin circle of Highlanders. To the Indians' surprise, the Black Watch is suddenly reinforced by a mass of regulars and rangers. The Indians are caught in a trap and a lethal crossfire. Those who can, run. Few of them make it. Now, except for the groans of the dying, the hill is silent. It is the first time that the British have fought the enemy on its own terms and won. After the crushing defeat of the Indian forces on August 6, 1763 at Bushy Run, Pennsylvania, the rebellion loses momentum. Winter is coming. The Indians must hunt and move with the change in season. One by one, they begin to slip away. The French habitants who had encouraged and often aided Pontiac's revolt are finally convinced that the peace treaty signed by France and England has made them British subjects. Pontiac's dream has ended. He now knows the French will never come to his aid. In late October, Pontiac gives up the siege of Fort Detroit and sues for peace.